Good morning and welcome to Will's Green Permaculture. It's early July, first week of July, and I'd like to give you a garden update. Show you the main garden and a couple of the other ones to give you an idea of how much we plant in order to grow all of our food that can be grown for a year. That'll be enough to eat for a year. So if this is something you're interested in, then let's get started. This is our main cabbage patch, red calabash cabbage, surrounded by onions planted from seed. The onions are very small. Their main role there is to just be companion plants to keep the pests away. And if we get some onions from them later in the season, that would be great. Here are the peppers. They're coming along well, considering they were tiny when I transplanted them. I had sown them in pots that were way too small. Cells of little pots with 6 cells in them, way too small. I'm not going to do that again. Next year I'll be starting them in 4-inch pots likely. This was a very weedy area of the garden too, so after I transplanted them I weeded about a week later and then put this straw down. And I completely cleared the weeds before transplanting. Each pepper also has a couple onions as a companion on the outside. On the inside there's nothing. And then the odd cilantro. There's some lettuce here. There's also a bit of calendula here and there. We also have some chipiche on the outside with a bunch of the peppers. Of course, there's the main patch of sage and yarrow and wild bergamot that I cut back when I transplanted them. So now it's coming back, it's growing back again, but it's still not shading out the peppers. Our main tomato area, we have 12 plants here, plus a whole bunch of volunteers. And then we also have 23 plants in the greenhouse. And what we have here are tomatoes with lettuce and dill. The lettuce is all done now, but we're letting it go to seed, go to flower and go to seed, because the flower spikes are going to be very useful. They're going to attract pollinators to the tomatoes, plus they're going to provide extra trellising for the tomatoes. Dill does the same thing when it gets to full size. And we have the dill between the tomatoes on the inside of the rows. Here are the tomatoes in the greenhouse. And here's one of their only companions, a carrot going to seed. This is a carrot from last year that I pulled up and put into a pot. These plants are waiting for the garlic to be harvested and are going to take their place along with these ground cherries. And this Williams sorghum. I'm going to see how late I can transplant it this year. I'm also going to throw some of this cabbage in there. And I've got a bit of celery, some marigolds, some calendula, stray pepper, and even some beets that have been biding their time in these pots for a couple months. I might even try transplanting a couple of these leftover peppers. This is what I was talking about the peppers earlier in the video. This is what I planted them in. not, it's way too small. Way too small. It's what I've been using the last few years, but it's just too stressful, because when they're ready, it's like you got to get them in, because they can't spend too much time in here. I mean, they survive, but the longer they have to survive in a pot like this, the longer it takes them to adapt to their new spot. I mean, these will still grow, but I'll see when I transplant them how they do. Here's one of our 3 onion and carrot patches. These onions are almost getting ready, maybe a few more weeks, maybe the end of July they'll be ready to pick. They've started leaning over, and then the carrots will just take over. I just watered, that's why the carrots are all lying down. This is one of our sorghum patches. This is the sorghum that Robert Reznik gave me. It's a short sorghum. It's probably almost full height. It might grow to maybe another foot higher than that, I'm not sure. And then here beside it, and these were transplanted plants. And then here beside it, we have Williams sorghum. In the back, the taller plants were transplanted, and in the front, they were direct sown. I'll be talking in more detail about my sorghum experiment in another video. And then as companion plants, they have marigolds here along the front. And I had some extra peppers and watermelon and also parsley. And so they're also all here along the front of the sorghum. This is the heart or the center of the garden, which for the last 4 of the last 5 years has had the 3 sisters in it. But I find that corn in our main garden is too much of a magnet for both raccoons and deer. Even though we do keep them out pretty well, sometimes if they're really stubborn, they can get in. And so, because we don't have anything that completely stops them. And so what we have here instead is some millet, some coral sorghum, and beans all around this circle here. And then we have potatoes as well that come back every year here. They're full of potato bugs right now, but eventually the potato bugs will finish up and those potatoes will be able to finish growing. And also in the center, we have a whole bunch of sunflowers that are volunteers. I had to cut a whole bunch of them because otherwise they would have taken over the whole area. But those are all the ones that I left. This year I decided to let the rhubarb do what it wanted to do, so it's all gone to seed. These seed spikes are quite beautiful. It looks like gigantic curly dock. Got a big healthy oregano patch here, right beside the ground cherries that I transplanted a few days ago. And then we have some parsley going to seed, some anise hyssop and some yarrow that I cut down low while the ground cherries grow. And then those things can grow back up. Back here in the area that is dominated by stinging nettle, I pulled it all up. It's all going to come back anyways. I pulled all the stinging nettle, just not all its roots, and I planted this as some barley here. We got barley. These were transplanted plants here, and then over here where you see a lot more nettle and other weeds is where I direct sowed the barley. And then in behind the barley, we've got some popping sorghum. Sorghum for making pop sorghum with, popping sorghum. And then beside it, in the rest of the area that was full of stinging nettle, I recently transplanted some dino kale and some extra cabbages that I had, and some beans. By the fall, the stinging nettle will be completely back, and then in the spring, for the first couple months of spring, it's going to feed us again. As you can see, here's a real healthy one right here. In the corner right behind there, that's where I pile up everything that I pull up from this garden. And then I'm either going to put it right back on in the fall or put it onto our bigger compost, or maybe bring it to the back chinampa to help build the soil back there, because that's full of stinging nettle root and mint root, which are very stubborn, and so are excellent for soil building because they form a real net beneath the soil. That's why things grow with difficulty. This dino kale had a lot of difficulty getting started, but now it's finally growing. The barley did better. One of our many catnip patches. This is what I use as tick prevention. Some asparagus, right alongside some cauliflower. There's maybe some broccoli, but I think this is mostly cauliflower here. We're now on the other side of the center of the garden. And then here we've got a watermelon patch, and the companion plants are basil. 3 kinds of basil: Thai basil, purple basil, and Genovese basil, all along the outside. And then there are a whole bunch of ground cherry volunteers in amongst the watermelon. And there are a few tomato volunteers as well. And then behind the watermelon, there is wild bergamot and also some mint as companion plants. I cut that way down when I transplanted the watermelon, and now it's coming back and it'll flower soon. Over here we have the garlic, which is just about ready to harvest. It's been a real dry year, so the tops are quite dry, and it's almost ready. Each stalk has about 2 completely dry leaves and still has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and sometimes 6 green ones. I'm waiting for one more completely dry leaf, and then I'm going to start test harvesting them to see if when I pull them up, they look like they're ready. Now that they're big and full size, I had been weeding them, but now that they're big and full size, I've let this mustard go to flower, because it's wonderful for attracting pollinators to the garden, and it also repels pests. The leaves are delicious. They taste just like mustard. So do the flowers. And of course, we can make mustard with the seeds, and we get thousands upon thousands of them. I'm also going to let the watermelon cross the road here, cross the path. A whole bunch of them want to cross the path and move into the garlic bed after I harvest the garlic. Harvest it in about a week, I think, and by that time this watermelon should already have arrived. Here we have an area of the garden that's a little bit wild. It's where we have our sorrel. That's all gone to flower. There's some wild bergamot here, and there's a whole bunch of oregano. And beside that, we have some ever-bearing raspberries. And beside the ever-bearing raspberries, we have some cucumbers from Guadeloupe cucumbers. They look like they're thorny. They're really cute when they grow, but you can eat them, the whole thing, even the outside. I forgot to mention when I was talking about the cauliflower, along the edges of the cauliflower we have calendula. It's not blooming yet, but it's almost there. They're the companion plants, calendula and some apple mint. This is one of the most beautiful mints, and it's really, really delicious. Mint can be a real pain in the garden, but we find it's useful, and when it gets too much, we just cut it all back. And we use the roots for soil building. Behind the sorghum, we've got a whole bunch of buckwheat mixed with beans going up these poles. On much of the outer contour, along a line that's about 2 feet above the 4-foot fence, we have wild grapes, which have been growing slowly and spreading along the contour really nicely, and they are full of fruit. Here's a close-up of some of it. Just behind the popping sorghum here, and here's some more of that. Those wonderful wild grape bunches. Wild grape is excellent for juicing it and also for making a balsamic type salad dressing, or you don't even need to add vinegar. It's sweet and sour at the same time. Really, really delicious. And along with the grapes and some roses and raspberries, as they get really tall, as they're between 5 and 6 feet tall, and sometimes taller, and really, really thick, they're about 3 feet to a meter thick, the deer can't see over them. And if the deer can't see over them, then they're not going to jump over. Deer won't jump over a hedge that it can't see the other side. Here's our beet patch that I've started to weed, but that corner over there I haven't weeded yet. I have to get to that. I've weeded this area and this area. These beets right here are from homegrown seed, which is really, really nice. I love it when I can get homegrown seed from beets. You just have to take a beet, keep it, and either leave it in the ground for the winter or keep it and then replant it the following year. And if it grows, then it'll give you seed because it'll be in its second year. Behind the beets and on the bottom edge of the whole garden, the north end, we've got peas, a whole bunch of peas. And we've got some potato volunteers there, more dill, more cabbage along the back there too. This year on our cattle panels, we're just growing Luffa and beans to allow the Luffa to have most of the area. The beans will actually grow faster, but the beans will help feed the Luffa, and they will also help the Luffa climb. I planted a couple cucumbers as well on the cattle panel, and at their base as companion plants we've got some parsley, some curly parsley, and also there's a bit of Williams sorghum in here that I transplanted because it's going to grow real tall, and maybe the Luffa will grow up onto that as well. Got a bit of mustard as well and sunflowers that I kept cutting back, but now that the Luffa's growing, I'm letting it grow. We got a bunch of fruit that's starting to form, and the Luffa is about just over 4 feet up right now at the beginning of July. About 1.20 meters high. Some of it's almost my height. Right there, there's one that's my height. This is our main potato patch, which I didn't plant this year. Along with all the other areas where we have potatoes growing, you could call them volunteers, although they're not really volunteers, because when I harvested last fall, when I harvested these potatoes, I just kept some smaller ones and threw them right back into the loose soil and then covered everything up in straw. And now they're all growing. Right now they're being completely decimated by potato bugs, but the potato bugs will finish up at some point. The birds are eating a lot of them, and then these potato plants will just grow back and we'll get a harvest. Considering that we didn't even have to plant them, it's a real bonus. I had a few small areas where there were no plants at the beginning of the season. Threw some tomatoes in there just to have some fun, because you're not really supposed to mix tomatoes with potatoes, although I've seen some people graft a tomato top onto a potato bottom and have them grow successfully. Tomatoes with potatoes in their roots. Along the fence over there, the cucumbers are just starting to get going. They're growing along the external fence of the garden, where there's not a whole lot of stuff growing on the other side. Well, there was stuff, but I cut it back. When the cucumbers are bigger, then they'll grow back. Here's another view of some of the bunches of wild grapes growing along our contour. Quite a few of them. Really, really nice. Very healthy grapes, these ones. Contour also has a lot of native flowers, a bit of elderberry, although our main elderberry patch is over there. It's gigantic. Liatris, coneflower, lemon balm, lavender, more raspberries, more wild bergamot, more oregano, and much more. In our orchard we have a couple of domestic grape rows. If you're interested, I'll show you a complete video of the orchard as well. We've got some Luffa, no, not Luffa, birdhouse gourd. We've got some birdhouse gourd growing up this Norway maple, which is an invasive species here. And so we've been slowly cutting it back. But this year I decided that because there are so few branches near the bottom, the birdhouse gourd could take advantage. And so maybe we're going to be having some birdhouse gourds hanging naturally in the tree at the end of the season. It's quite high. It's all the way up there right now. That's about 3.5 meters high, about 12 feet up. This is one of our grain experiment gardens. We got about 6 or 7 types of grain growing in here, all mixed up. There's barley, there's oats, there's wheat, there's millet, and more. There's also a buckwheat in the back here. And then here we have a box here made of logs in which I planted a little ginkgo tree, and to accompany it, a couple of cabbages and some onions and yarrow. There's also, it looks like some sorghum volunteers here. Maybe corn, but I think these are sorghum volunteers. And a few sunflower volunteers as well. The buckwheat really likes this area. Full sun. Cabbage is doing very well. This is our most advanced cabbage, I think. If you remember the video from, I think it was January, winter sow in the snow, and it finished off with all these pots being covered in snow and some fabric to protect them from the animals. Well, now it's time to transplant these and give them some full sun, because they're all growing, all these native flowers and stuff. And now it's time to transplant. This is our main bean area here, which has got some wild mint, some nasturtiums just coming along that are eventually going to push these beans up against the fence. Got some yarrow here and some wormwood, more potato volunteers all over the place. And the beans are doing really well. And some curly dock from last year. Oh, I'm gonna have to collect that seed, make some flour with it. Actually, no, that might be from this year because that stem is green. And these are some green curly dock seeds. Wow, that went to seed and dried up real fast. That's really useful stuff. Just next to another one of our pumpkin patches, we have one of our most beautiful lavender patches. It's really wonderful. This watermelon is doing really well this year because when I prepared this instant garden with all these logs from dead trees, and there was a video about this a few months ago, there had been straw surrounding this compost garden, and I put all the straw into these two gardens, this one and that one, because watermelon does not compete with weeds well at all. And so, as you can see on the outside of this garden, there's a whole bunch of lamb's quarters, there's ragweed, there's evening primrose. This garden would be full of all that stuff, and it's hard to weed it out when the watermelon is growing. And so the straw has really helped maintain the garden moist and also just give the watermelon less competition. And so it's really, really doing well. And then speaking about that instant garden, here it is. So as you can see, the onions are not quite as big as the ones that are planted in the ground in the main garden. But that area where they're planted in the ground in the main garden is one of the wettest spots in that garden out front. And whereas this here area is a dry area, although this, because it keeps our kitchen compost in the wintertime, there's still a lot of water down in there. And so the onions and the carrots are doing quite well. And there's not too many weeds. I haven't had to do too much weeding in here. And so they're doing quite well. And here is the pumpkin patch. 1:20 in the afternoon. It must be about 35 degrees Celsius out here, close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And the pumpkins are doing well, because this patch is right beside the rain garden, where we have all our elderberry, which go from over there to all the way over there. I water as little as possible to encourage the plants to send their roots down to that water. This hill here is built on an anthill. I probably should have removed this stump, because I believe the anthill is actually, I believe the ant civilization is inside that stump. However, I just planted a whole bunch of extra seeds to give the ants something else to eat, because all I really need is 2 plants to grow here, and there are about over a dozen plants growing here. As long as the ants have a lot to eat and have a lot of water, they'll let the plants grow. There are beans in the middle there, and over on the other end there's a birdhouse gourd growing. And just to show you that this is humid, that's cardinal flower right there. And this is Joe Pie wheat here and here. They like it humid. The 3 sisters in the moon garden. Corn, beans, and squash. The 3 sisters on the chinampa. Also corn, beans, and squash. The broccoli on the chinampa. This garden is never watered. Some sunflowers on the chinampa. A bit more broccoli. Some more squash. And another view of the 3 sisters on the chinampa. The 3 sisters in the moon garden. Corn, beans, and squash. The corn you see right here is that corn that I showed you in that video. Can corn survive the Canadian winter? The cobs that I had found still hanging off of some corn stalks that were still standing in our turtle garden in the spring. They had stayed there all winter long, and when I was cleaning up the garden to plant the corn, to plant the 3 sisters, I found those cobs there along with a whole bunch of beans hanging. And so I made that video, and here it is. I was wondering if it would grow. I was wondering if that corn that stayed out all winter would grow. And here it is growing. These cobs that had stayed hanging all winter long. So it's good to know. If you'd like to see that video, I'll put a link to it up in the corner here. The strawbale instant garden. The onions didn't do too well here. They've dried up. I'm hoping that when the rain starts again, they'll start to grow again. But the strawbale was too dry for them, but the carrots are doing fine. We've had no rain, and I don't water this area. It's too far from any hose. Right beside it, we have the millet, coral sorghum, and amaranth garden, with those 3 cattails. Behind that millet and sorghum garden, we've got another mini pumpkin patch here. Lots of water here. This doesn't get watered. And here are the 2 mini chinampa gardens with broccoli and cauliflower and potatoes that come back every year. Here's the other one. A beautiful tulip tree That was next to this garden, got knocked down by a falling tree, but it's growing back, as you can see by these huge leaves. The other one, which was smaller, has taken its place. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it useful and you learned something from it. If you liked it, then please give it the thumbs up and please share it with your friends. And if you haven't done so yet, then please subscribe to our channel. Support what we do here just by subscribing. That way, maybe you'll be able to see some more videos. And if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to leave them below, because I love to answer your questions and respond to your comments. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.